the shroud has some very interesting characteristics, and these are not only interesting, but they're scientific characteristics.
The Shroud of Turin has captivated scholars, scientists, historians, and believers for centuries. Despite extensive research and analysis, certain aspects about this ancient linen cloth, purportedly the burial shroud of Jesus Christ, remain enigmatic. This video delves into 15 mysteries associated with the shroud that continue to confound experts, challenging both religious beliefs and scientific understandings. Number 1. Carbon dating controversy. In 1988, the Shroud of Turin underwent carbon-14 dating tests that appeared to settle the question of its age once and for all. Conducted by labs in Oxford, Zurich, and Arizona, the tests concluded that the shroud originated between 1260 and 1390 AD, effectively debunking claims that it could be the 2000-year-old burial cloth of Jesus. However, the carbon dating process and its results have since become a subject of intense scrutiny and debate. Firstly, there is the matter of where the samples were taken from for the carbon dating. It's argued that the small sample cut from the shroud came from an area that was not only handled frequently, but may also have been subject to repairs in the medieval period. Some experts suggest that the presence of cotton threads intertwined with the linen fibers of the shroud could significantly skew the dating results, as cotton was not widely used in textiles until the Middle Ages. Therefore, a composite sample containing both original and repair material could yield a date that inaccurately represents the age of the primary linen cloth. Lastly, the carbon dating results were not universally accepted within the scientific community. A few researchers have called for more rigorous and repeated testing, perhaps employing other methods alongside carbon-14 dating to cross-verify results. Despite the apparent clarity provided by the 1988 tests, the issue of the Shroud of Turin's age remains far from settled, ensuring that the carbon dating controversy continues to be one of the most perplexing mysteries associated with the artifact. Number 2. Pollen evidence. The presence of pollen grains on the Shroud of Turin has long been a subject of intrigue and debate, with implications stretching across botany, climatology, and archaeology. Swiss criminologist Max Frey was one of the first to study pollen samples from the shroud, and he identified pollen grains originating from plants specific to the Jerusalem area. These findings were initially met with enthusiasm, as they seemed to strengthen the case for the shroud's connection to the historical Jesus and his reported burial in Jerusalem. However, the pollen evidence has its share of skeptics. Critics point out that Max Frey's methodology was not entirely rigorous. His adhesive tape sampling technique could potentially introduce contamination. Moreover, the shroud has been displayed in various locations throughout its known history, allowing for the possibility of environmental contamination of pollen from different geographical regions. It has been subjected to numerous instances of handling, travel, and even public exposition. Such activities could compromise the integrity of any pollen samples obtained from the cloth. Despite these criticisms, proponents of the pollen evidence argue that some of the identified species are native only to specific regions near Jerusalem and are not found in Europe, where the shroud has mostly been kept. Some pollen grains are from plants that bloom in the spring, aligning with the timing of Jesus' crucifixion during Passover. This detail, they argue, could not be easily faked or contaminated. What makes the pollen evidence especially intriguing is its potential to provide a geographical and temporal fingerprint for the shroud. However, the lack of consensus on the validity and interpretation of the pollen data means that, like many other aspects of the shroud, it remains a tantalizing yet unresolved mystery. Questions about contamination, methodology, and the possible introduction of pollen grains during the shroud's long and storied history keep this topic an ongoing puzzle in the study of this enigmatic artifact. Number 3. Image formation theories. The unique and haunting image imprinted on the Shroud of Turin has captured the fascination of scientists and theologians alike, and many theories have been proposed to explain how the image was formed. The image itself presents an anatomically correct, life-sized front and back view of a man with apparent crucifixion wounds, yet it is not made from pigments, dyes, or stains. This immediately rules out any traditional artistic techniques and opens the door to a myriad of speculations. Another proposition is the Maillard reaction theory, which suggests that the image was formed through a natural chemical interaction between the gases emitted by a decomposing body and the sugars and starches present on the surface of the linen. While this theory offers a plausible naturalistic explanation, it has been criticized for not adequately accounting for the high degree of detail in the image. Then there is the theory of vaporography, suggesting that vapors from oils and spices, traditionally used in Jewish burial practices, might have reacted with the surface of the linen to create the image. However, no conclusive experiments have successfully replicated the image on the shroud using this method. What all these theories have in common is that none have been able to comprehensively replicate the image on the shroud, capturing its subtlety, precision, and three-dimensional qualities. This leaves the scientific community, much like the image itself, in a state of unresolved tension. While advances in technology and analytical techniques may offer new insights in the future, the question of how the image on the shroud was formed remains one of its most baffling and contested mysteries. Number 4. Historical traces and records. The historical journey of the Shroud of Turin is a labyrinthine tapestry of events, locations, and custodians, adding yet another layer of mystery to its already enigmatic existence. According to some accounts, the shroud can be traced back to Edessa, modern-day Urfa in Turkey, where it was known as the image of Edessa. It was reportedly transferred to Constantinople before disappearing during the sack of the city in 1204. The shroud then reappeared in Lille, France, in the 14th century, in the possession of a French knight, Geoffrey de Charny. The first definitive historical mention of the shroud as we know it today is in 1357, when it was displayed in Lille by Geoffrey de Charny. The documentation increases significantly from this point on, including a detailed description by Bishop Pierre d'Arcis in 1389, who declared it to be a forgery. However, this assertion is fraught with its own controversies, including political motivations and questions around the bishop's veracity. What further complicates the shroud's historical trace are the numerous copies and artistic representations that were produced throughout the Middle Ages. These copies, some of which were believed to have been in contact with the original shroud, create a convoluted historical record that is difficult to untangle. In the end, the historical traces and records of the Shroud of Turin, much like other aspects of this puzzling artifact, present more questions than answers. Its provenance remains unclear, and each historical claim seems to generate a web of additional mysteries and debates. Number 5. Bloodstain patterns. One of the most striking features of the Shroud of Turin is the presence of bloodstains that correspond with the wounds suffered during a crucifixion. These stains are not only present in the areas where one would expect to find them, on the hands, feet, and side, but they also exhibit properties that have baffled experts. For instance, the bloodstains on the shroud are consistent with those that would be made by a real human body lying in a burial position, suggesting a level of anatomical correctness that would be difficult to forge. Forensic experts who have studied the shroud point out that the blood appears to have flowed from actual wounds and follows the patterns one would expect from gravity and body position. The stains that appear to come from the wrist area are compatible with what modern medicine knows about the pathways blood would take when flowing from crucifixion wounds. Even more puzzling, the bloodstains remain reddish, unlike the brown or black color that ancient blood typically takes on over long periods. This has led some to speculate on the presence of unique biological markers or conditions that could have preserved the color. However, skeptics question these findings on several fronts. Some experts argue that the patterns are too consistent to have come from an actual human body, and instead suggest the work of a skilled artist who had an intimate understanding of human anatomy. Skeptics also point out that certain patterns, such as the flow of blood from the side wound or the markings around the head, purportedly from a crown of thorns, lack the level of detail and consistency one would expect from genuine stains. The complexities around the bloodstain patterns extend beyond the mere presence of blood. They delve into the realms of hematology, forensic science, and even questions of miraculous preservation. Despite extensive study, the questions remain, making the bloodstains on the Shroud of Turin one of its most enduring and unexplained features. Number 6. 3D characteristics. The three-dimensional qualities of the image on the Shroud of Turin are unlike anything found in traditional two-dimensional artworks, adding yet another layer of mystery to this enigmatic object. When the image is subjected to modern imaging techniques, it displays an astonishing level of three-dimensional detail, something that has baffled scientists, artists, and researchers. The notion that a medieval forgery could include this kind of sophisticated 3D imaging information is highly unlikely given the technological constraints of the period. When VP8 image analyzers, originally developed for aerospace research, were used to examine the shroud, the resulting images were unlike any other two-dimensional image ever analyzed. The contours and relief of the face and body appeared in remarkable detail, displaying natural proportions and depth that would be expected from a true 3D object. The data implicit in the image seems to encode spatial information about the distance between the cloth and the body it supposedly wrapped. This phenomenon is not present in ordinary photographs or artworks, and certainly not in any other relics or ancient textiles that have been studied. In a realm where art, science, and faith intersect, the 3D characteristics of the shroud's image defy easy explanation. They challenge our understanding of both ancient artistic practices and the limitations of natural physical processes, deepening the shroud's enigma and leaving room for endless interpretation and debate. Number 7. Microscopic particles and markings. Upon microscopic examination, the Shroud of Turin reveals an even more confounding layer of details. These range from traces of dirt and microscopic particles to mysterious markings that are invisible to the naked eye. One of the most discussed microscopic findings is the presence of particles that appear to be travertine aragonite limestone, a specific form of calcium carbonate. Proponents argue that this type of limestone is consistent with samples found in Jerusalem, adding another layer of potential authenticity to the shroud as the burial cloth of Christ. In addition to limestone, the cloth also contains microscopic particles of various pollens. Some of these pollen grains are native to the Middle East, particularly regions around Jerusalem, once again suggesting that the cloth could have originated or at least been exposed to that geographic locale. Critics, however, question the methods of pollen extraction and analysis, pointing out that the shroud has been handled by countless individuals and exposed to numerous environments over the centuries, which could easily introduce foreign particles. What adds another layer of complexity is that all these microscopic particles and markings have survived centuries of deterioration, contamination, and even a fire in 1532 that left scorch marks and water stains on the cloth. Yet despite all this, the microscopic features remain strangely intact and visible, adding to the litany of unexplained phenomena that shroud this enigmatic artifact in perpetual mystery. Number 8. Negative image phenomenon. One of the most perplexing aspects of the Shroud of Turin is the negative image imprinted on the cloth. When the shroud was first photographed in 1898 by Secondo Pia, it was discovered that the negative of the photograph produced an incredibly detailed, positive image of a face and body. This was in stark contrast to the somewhat vague and ghostly appearance of the image as seen directly on the cloth. The negative image phenomenon led to a renewed interest in the shroud and opened the door for more rigorous scientific examinations. This aspect defies straightforward explanation. A negative image naturally appearing on the cloth implies that the image formation process was akin to a photographic negative, something wholly unexpected for a relic purported to be from the 1st century. The details revealed in the negative image include strikingly three-dimensional qualities, flesh tones, and even the suggestion of blood and other bodily fluids. The minute details that become visible through the negative image are so intricate that they are hard to reconcile with any known artistic or natural processes, particularly those available in the medieval period or earlier. In a mystery laden with incongruities and unanswered questions, the negative image phenomenon stands as one of the most confounding. Despite numerous investigations using the most advanced imaging technologies, the cause of this effect remains elusive, contributing to the enduring mystique and debate surrounding the Shroud of Turin. Number 9. Inconsistencies in fiber and material. The inconsistencies found in the fibers and material of the Shroud of Turin add yet another layer of complexity to its enigma. The shroud is primarily composed of linen, woven in a herringbone pattern. However, upon closer examination, inconsistencies in the type of fiber, the weave, and even signs of repair or alteration become apparent, confounding experts in textiles and material sciences. These inconsistencies are particularly evident in the area around the C14 sample that was used for radiocarbon dating, where it was later suggested that the sample might have been taken from a portion of the shroud that was repaired in the medieval period. Additionally, there are signs of what appear to be medieval mending techniques in certain sections of the cloth. These repaired areas use a weaving method not consistent with the primary herringbone pattern and are dyed to match the older yellowed portions of the shroud, making them difficult to detect without close examination. These areas of repair have led some to argue that the shroud might be a composite object, subjected to restoration efforts that could have altered its original properties. These inconsistencies in fiber and material pose significant challenges to both skeptics and proponents of the shroud's authenticity. They bring into focus the importance of examining the shroud as a composite, multi-generational artifact that has undergone changes, alterations, and perhaps even adulterations over the centuries. These material anomalies have yet to be fully explained, adding to the shroud's long video of enduring mysteries. Number 10. UV radiation and the image. The notion that ultraviolet, UV radiation, could be involved in the formation of the Shroud of Turin's image adds an intriguing scientific angle to its many mysteries. Research has shown that the coloration on the shroud could theoretically be produced by a burst of UV radiation. Experiments using intense UV lasers on linen samples have resulted in color changes that somewhat resemble the image on the shroud. In these experiments, the surface fibers of the linen are discolored in a way that mimics the superficial nature of the shroud's image, which does not penetrate deeply into the cloth, but appears to rest on top of it. The UV radiation hypothesis gains further traction from the fact that no historical or artistic methods have been successfully employed to replicate the shroud's unique features fully. The idea that some form of radiant energy was necessary to produce such an image naturally leads to discussions that transcend conventional scientific explanations and delve into the realm of the miraculous, or, at the very least, the as-yet unexplained. However, skeptics question the viability of the UV radiation theory for a number of reasons. Firstly, the amount of UV radiation required to produce such an image would be incredibly high, and there is no historical or empirical evidence to suggest such an event occurred. Second, the UV theory does not adequately explain other characteristics of the shroud, such as the blood stains, which appear to have been transferred by contact with a body. While the UV radiation theory offers an enticing scientific explanation for the shroud's image, it also raises further questions and challenges existing assumptions. Whether this theory could ever be proven remains uncertain, but it undeniably adds another layer of complexity to the ongoing debate and investigation surrounding the Shroud of Turin. Number 11. Presence of Roman coins over the eyes. The claim that images of Roman coins can be seen over the eyes of the figure on the Shroud of Turin adds a captivating yet contentious dimension to its study. Initial observations, magnified through photographs and digital enhancements, suggested that coin-like objects appeared over the eyes of the imprinted face. Some researchers have even gone so far as to claim that these coin images correspond to Roman lepta minted during the reign of Pontius Pilate, making a compelling argument for those who wish to place the shroud in 1st century Jerusalem. The presence of these coin images, if proven to be genuine, would provide an important piece of circumstantial evidence corroborating the shroud's historical setting within the Roman-occupied Holy Land. The placement of coins over the eyes of the deceased was a known practice in antiquity, intended either as a ritual offering or a practical measure to keep the eyes closed. However, these claims have been met with considerable skepticism. Critics argue that the supposed images of the coins are too indistinct to identify definitively. They suggest that the coin images may be pareidolia, a psychological phenomenon where the mind perceives a familiar pattern where none exists. Digital enhancements can be manipulated to show desired results, and the quality of the images on the shroud is not sufficient to confirm such a minute detail. Number 12. Controversies regarding repair threads. One of the most contentious aspects of the Shroud of Turin involves the repair threads found in the cloth. These threads have been cited in arguments questioning the validity of the 1988 radiocarbon dating, which dated the shroud to the medieval period. Those who dispute these results suggest that the sample taken for testing included these repair threads, which were woven into the shroud at a later date and are not representative of the cloth's original material. These repair threads appear to be dyed to match the surrounding older material and are thought to have been introduced to patch worn or damaged areas of the shroud. The weaving technique used in these repairs is consistent with methods developed in the medieval period, adding fuel to the argument that the carbon dating results were skewed by the presence of newer material. The controversy surrounding these repair threads deepens the mystery of the shroud. If the threads are indeed later additions, they could significantly affect dating results and any subsequent interpretation. This controversy has led to calls for new tests and analyses to determine the shroud's true age conclusively. Despite the contention, the repair threads remain a critical, yet unresolved aspect of the shroud's complex history. Number 13. The Sedarium of Ovo connection. The Sedarium of Ovo, a blood-stained cloth believed to have been used to cover Jesus' face after his crucifixion, has been proposed as having a direct connection to the Shroud of Turin. Both are considered by some to be relics associated with Jesus Christ, and similarities between the two have raised intriguing questions. For instance, blood-stain patterns on the Sedarium are said to align closely with those on the Shroud, suggesting that they may have been used on the same body. The Sedarium, housed in the Cathedral of San Salvador in Oviedo, Spain, has its own long history of veneration and scientific study. The most compelling evidence for the connection between the two cloths is the apparent congruence of blood type and patterns of bloodstains, especially around the face. The blood on both the shroud and the Sedarium has been identified as type AB, a less common blood type, further intensifying the intrigue. Additionally, both cloths show signs of having been in contact with a body that suffered traumatic injuries consistent with crucifixion. Despite these striking similarities, skeptics argue that this could be a case of confirmation bias, where people are more likely to notice features that confirm their pre-existing beliefs and ignore those that don't. Critics also point out that the Sedarium has its own set of controversies regarding its age and history, which casts doubt on the legitimacy of connecting it to the shroud. Number 14. Anomalous behavior of shroud in experiments. One of the enduring puzzles surrounding the Shroud of Turin is its anomalous behavior in various scientific experiments. Multiple studies have aimed to unravel the shroud's mysteries using state-of-the-art technologies, from spectroscopy to advanced imaging techniques. However, the shroud often defies expectations. For instance, the three-dimensionality of the shroud's image, which can be observed when the image is processed through a VP8 image analyzer, is unlike any other two-dimensional image. This property has yet to be satisfactorily explained or replicated in laboratory conditions. Similarly, the peculiar superficiality of the image on the shroud, affecting only the topmost fibers of the linen, presents challenges to conventional wisdom. Attempts to reproduce the unique characteristics of the shroud's image have mostly been unsuccessful, despite using advanced technologies that should, in theory, be capable of mimicking the effects observed on the cloth. Chemical analyses, too, have yielded contradictory results. Failing to detect any pigments, dyes, or painting mediums, that could account for the image. Additionally, in various other tests, including exposure to different types of light, the shroud has displayed unpredictable and unexplained properties. In some experiments, the cloth has shown resistance to the effects of aging and decay that would be expected of a material of its purported age, adding another layer of mystery. These anomalous results in scientific experiments contribute to the deepening enigma of the Shroud of Turin. They challenge both skeptics and believers to seek ever more sophisticated methods of analysis in the quest to understand this baffling relic. Number 15. Lack of decay and durability. The durability and lack of decay in the Shroud of Turin is a matter that puzzles scientists and historians alike. For a cloth that is claimed to be anywhere from several hundred to over 2,000 years old, the shroud remains remarkably well preserved. Its preservation raises questions, considering that the linen should have been susceptible to deterioration from a variety of factors such as exposure to light, air, and moisture, not to mention the corrosive properties of the bloodstains it purportedly bears. Moreover, the shroud's resistance to decay has implications for the methods used to date it. For instance, the 1988 radiocarbon dating tests, which suggested the shroud was a medieval creation, are called into question not just by the presence of repair threads, as previously mentioned, but also by the remarkable condition of the cloth. If the cloth has indeed experienced less decay than would be expected, it could potentially throw off radiocarbon dating methods, adding another layer of complexity to the already contentious issue of the shroud's age. All in all, the exceptional durability and lack of decay in the Shroud of Turin present yet another mystery in a long video of enigmas surrounding this artifact. Whether its preservation is due to unknown environmental factors, some form of treatment, or even phenomena yet to be understood, the shroud's state of preservation challenges our understanding of material science and history, adding another fascinating chapter to the ongoing narrative of this perplexing relic.